June 6, 1944, Normandy, France. Staff Sergeant Lafayette Pool sits in the commander's position of his M4 Sherman tank, call sign, in the mood. He's 21 years old. In the next 11 months, Pool's tank will be shot out from under him 3 times. Each time he'll watch crew members burn alive. Each time he'll climb into a new Sherman and continue fighting. On his 4th tank, his luck will run out. Pool was one of the most successful American tank commanders of World War II. He destroyed 258 enemy vehicles and killed over 1,000 German soldiers. But his story isn't one of glory. It's a story of survival against impossible odds in a machine that became known as the Death Trap on tracks. Out of the 250 men in an average Sherman tank battalion who went into combat, fewer than 50 would finish the war unharmed. That's an 80% casualty rate. The Germans called destroyed Shermans Blechsärge, sheet metal coffins. American crews called them Ronsons, after the lighter that advertised lights first time, every time. British crews called them Tommy Cookers, because they cooked British soldiers alive. Today we're going to follow Lafayette Pool and his fellow Sherman crews through the hell of armoured warfare. The waiting, the fear, the moment of impact, the fire, the screaming, and why, despite knowing the odds, these men kept climbing back into their steel coffins. Let's begin. Lafayette Pool's first Sherman tank was delivered to him in England 3 weeks before D-Day. He and his crew, gunner Wilbert Richards, loader Milton Gay, driver Bert Close, and assistant driver Del Boggs, spent those weeks training, learning the positions, learning the sounds, learning how to work as a single organism inside 30 tons of steel. The M4 Sherman was, on paper, an impressive machine. It could reach 25 miles per hour on roads. It was reliable. It rarely broke down. The engines started in all weather, and America could build them fast. Nearly 50,000 would be produced by war's end. But there were things the training instructors didn't tell Pool and his crew. They didn't tell them that the Sherman's 75mm gun couldn't penetrate the frontal armour of a German Panther tank at combat range. They didn't tell them that a German 88mm gun could punch through a Sherman's armour from over a mile away, long before the Sherman could even shoot back. They didn't tell them that the ammunition stored inside the tank, 90 rounds of 75mm shells, sat in racks right next to where they would be sitting, and they didn't tell them what happened when those shells got hit. Pool and his crew would learn all of this in Normandy, in the worst way possible. July 18, 1944. Operation Cobra. The breakout from Normandy. Pool's Sherman advances down a narrow French road, hedgerows on both sides, thick, ancient walls of earth and vegetation that create a maze, perfect terrain for German ambush. Inside the tank it's loud. The engine roars, the tracks clank, radio chatter crackles in Pool's headset, but underneath all that noise the crew is listening for the sound that means death. Every Sherman crew knew the sequence. First, you'd hear a sharp crack, the sound of a German gun firing. If you heard it, that meant the shell missed. If you heard crack-bang, the crack of the gun and the bang of impact almost simultaneous, that meant it hit. And if you heard crack-bang whoosh, the whoosh of air being sucked into the tank through the penetration hole, you had maybe 5 seconds before the ammunition cooked off. 5 seconds to get out. Pool described the waiting like this. You'd be rolling through a village or across a field, and every shadow could be an 88. Every window could have a Panzerfaust. You'd be sweating in that metal box, hands shaking, waiting for the hit. And you knew when it came, it would be without warning. 1 second you're alive, the next second everything is fire. The smell inside a Sherman was a mix of gun oil, gasoline, sweat and fear. The temperature on a summer day could reach 120 degrees Fahrenheit inside the crew compartment. You couldn't stand up. You couldn't stretch. You were packed in with 4 other men surrounded by explosives, waiting to die, and the waiting was sometimes worse than the fighting. Because when you're fighting, at least you're doing something. When you're waiting, all you can do is imagine what it will feel like when the shell comes through. Pool's crew made it through July 18th without being hit. Barely. A German Panther destroyed 2 Shermans in Pool's platoon that day. 10 men. 6 died in the fire. 4 made it out with burns covering their bodies. Pool and his crew helped pull one of the survivors out. His tanker coveralls had melted into his skin. That night, sitting beside their Sherman, Pool's loader Milton Gay said, "Skip, we're going to die in this thing, aren't we?" Pool didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. August 8, 1944, near the town of Le Mans. Pool's Sherman is advancing across an open field when it happens. Crack bang! A German 88mm shell hits the front glacis plate. The sound inside the tank is indescribable. It's not just a bang, it's a pressure wave that hits you in the chest and makes your teeth hurt. The shell punches through the armor. As it penetrates, fragments of the Sherman's own armor, called spalling, spray through the interior at supersonic speed. These fragments are like razor-sharp shrapnel. They ricochet off every surface inside the tank. Pool's driver, Bert Close, is hit in the arm by spalling. The fragment severs an artery, but that's not the worst part. The German shell has an explosive filler. When it detonates inside the crew compartment, the overpressure is enough to rupture eardrums and collapse lungs if you're close enough. Pool's gunner, Wilbert Richards, is killed instantly by the explosion, and then comes the fire. The ammunition stored along the hull walls, those 90 rounds of 75mm shells, starts to cook off. When a shell cooks off, it doesn't just explode. The propellant charge ignites and shoots the shell out of its rack like a rocket. Inside the confined space of a Sherman, these shells ricochet around the crew compartment. The temperature inside the tank climbs from 120 degrees to over 2,000 degrees in less than 10 seconds. Bert Close, the driver, is trapped in his position. The escape hatch above his head has been jammed by the hit. He's screaming. Pool, Milton Gay and Del Boggs bail out through the top hatch. Pool tries to go back for Richards and Close. The heat drives him back. He can't get within 5 feet of the tank. And then the main gun ammunition detonates. The entire turret lifts off the hull and lands 15 feet away. Bert Close's screaming stops. Pool stands there, watching his tank burn, listening to the ammunition continue to cook off inside. Later he would say, "You never forget the smell. Burning rubber, burning fuel, and burning men. It's a smell that gets into your nose and stays there. I could smell it for weeks afterward. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back there, watching them burn." Pool and his 2 surviving crew members are given a new tank. 2 replacement crew members are assigned to fill the empty positions. They're 19 years old, fresh from training. Pool doesn't even learn their names for the first 3 days. He doesn't want to get attached, because he knows what's coming. Pool's second Sherman lasts 11 days. September 19th, 1944, Belgium. A German Panther tank ambushes Pool's platoon at a crossroads. The Panther's 75mm gun is superior to the Sherman's in every way. Better penetration, better accuracy, better optics. The Panther destroys Pool's tank with a single shot through the side armor. This time the whole crew makes it out. But the 2 replacements, the ones Pool hadn't learned the names of, are hit by German machine gun fire as they exit the burning tank. One dies on the ground beside the tank. The other dies 3 days later in a field hospital. Pool gets a 3rd Sherman, and this is when you begin to understand the true horror of being a Sherman crew member. It's not just one traumatic event. It's the cycle. You survive a tank being destroyed. You watch friends die. You get a new tank. You get new crew members. You try not to get attached because you know this tank will be destroyed too. And you're right. By late 1944, the average lifespan of a Sherman tank in combat was 2 weeks. The average Sherman crew member who survived a tank being destroyed would be in a new tank within 48 hours. And statistically, that new tank would be destroyed within 14 days. Some crews went through 5 or 6 tanks. Each time you'd lose crew members. Each time you'd get replacements. The replacements were always young, always terrified, always asking the same questions. What's it like when you get hit? How do you know when to bail out? Did many guys make it out of your last tank? And the veterans would lie. They'd say, "Don't worry, you'll be fine. Just stay calm and you'll get out." But they knew the truth. The first man out of a burning Sherman had about a 50% chance of survival. The second man had about a 25% chance. The third man almost never made it. The driver and assistant driver, the 2 positions in the front hull, had the worst survival rate of all. Their escape hatches were directly above their heads, and if the tank was hit in the front, those hatches could be welded shut by the heat and deformation of the armor. Veterans knew this, so when a new driver or assistant driver asked what to do if the tank got hit, veterans would say, "Just get out fast, you'll be fine." What they didn't say was, "Your position has a 70% fatality rate if we take a frontal hit." Because what good would that do? The kid still had to climb into that position. Someone had to sit there, so you let him believe he had a chance. Let's step back and look at the full scale of what Sherman crews endured. The United States produced 49,234 Sherman tanks during World War II. Approximately 8,000 were destroyed in combat. Each destroyed tank had a 5-man crew. That's 40,000 crew positions in destroyed tanks. Of those crew members in destroyed tanks, approximately 18% were killed immediately by the hit. Another 12% were killed trying to escape or shortly after from their wounds. That's a 30% killed in action rate for crew members whose tanks were destroyed. This means roughly 12,000 American Sherman crew members died inside or beside their tanks. Another 15,000 were wounded, many with horrific burns. But here's what makes it worse. Those numbers only count the first time a tank was destroyed. Many crews survived one tank destruction, got a new tank, and died in the second or third one. The 3rd Armored Division, one of the premier American armored units, went through this cycle repeatedly. The division started the campaign in northwest Europe with about 15,000 men. By the end of the war, the division had suffered over 10,000 casualties. But here's the key number. The division's tank battalions had a replacement rate of 250% to 300%. That means every position in a tank crew had to be filled 2 to 3 times. Think about what that means. For every tank crew position, driver, assistant driver, loader, gunner, commander, an average of 2 to 3 men sat in that position during the war. The first one died or was wounded, the second one died or was wounded, sometimes a third. And throughout all of this, the tanks kept rolling, the missions kept coming, the attacks kept being ordered. Because the brutal calculus of war is this: American industry could replace tanks faster than Germany could destroy them, and America had enough men to keep filling the positions. Germany didn't. So American commanders sent Shermans against Panthers and Tigers, knowing the cost. 4 or 5 Shermans destroyed for every German heavy tank knocked out. 20 to 25 American crew members risking death to kill 5 Germans. The math was simple. America could afford the losses. Germany couldn't, but the men inside the Shermans paid the price for that calculation. Lafayette Pool's 3rd Sherman lasted until September 19, 1944. Near the German border, Pool's platoon encountered a camouflaged German anti-tank gun. The gun fired. Pool's tank was hit in the track. The tank was disabled but not destroyed. Pool and his crew bailed out. As they ran from the tank, a second German gun fired. The shell hit Pool in the leg, nearly severing it below the knee. Milton Gay and the other crew members dragged Pool to cover. Pool survived, but he lost his leg. He was 22 years old. In less than 4 months of combat, Pool had destroyed 258 enemy vehicles, killed over 1,000 enemy soldiers, had 3 tanks shot out from under him, lost 7 crew members to fire, survived 4 direct hits. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars and 5 Bronze Stars. After the war, Pool was asked, "Why did you keep getting back in?" His answer was simple: because my crew needed me and because someone had to. Pool lived until 1991. He never talked much about the war, but in one interview near the end of his life he said, "People ask me about the medals, about the kills, about being a hero, but I don't think about that. I think about Bert and Wilbert and the 2 kids whose names I never learned. I think about how they trusted me to bring them home, and I think about how I failed them." You want to know what it was like in a Sherman? It was loud and hot, and every day you knew might be your last. But the worst part wasn't the dying. The worst part was surviving when everyone else didn't. There are Sherman tanks in museums all over the world today. Restored, painted, perfect. If you ever visit one, look at the interior and notice how small the crew positions are. Notice how close together the men had to sit. Notice the ammunition racks along the walls. And try to imagine what it was like when that space filled with fire. Try to imagine being trapped in that burning metal box, knowing you have seconds to escape, knowing the ammunition is about to explode, knowing that the men around you, your friends, your brothers, might not make it out. The Sherman tank wasn't the best tank of World War II, but it won the war anyway, not because of its armor or its gun or its technology. It won because young men like Lafayette Pool kept climbing into them, kept fighting in them, kept dying in them. 12,000 American tank crew members died in Shermans. 15,000 more were wounded, many carrying burn scars for the rest of their lives. They knew the odds. They knew the Sherman was a death trap. They climbed in anyway, because someone had to, and they knew it. If this story moved you, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the forgotten stories of military history. In the comments, let me know, should we cover the German or Soviet tank crew experience next? Thank you for watching and for remembering Lafayette Pool and the thousands of men like him who never made it home.